In this video, we're going to focus on the relationships between percents, decimals, and fractions. So to begin, we're going to look at the relationship between percents and fractions. So here in part A, we're going to focus on turning 40% into a fraction. And what we can do with percents is we can actually represent them in this 100 box grid. So 40%, if we color in 40% of this grid, this first line represents 10 boxes, 20 boxes, 30 boxes, and 40 boxes. And you can see we have a total of 10 different rows here. And so we know for a fact that we've colored in 40% of this block because we've colored in 4 rows of 10, which is 40 blocks out of 100. Now, what we can do with that is we can actually turn that into a fraction. So we can say, well, 40%, if we look at this, we colored in 40 out of 100 boxes. So we can take any percent and turn it into a fraction by putting that number over 100. Then from here, what we can do is we can simplify down this fraction in order to get the best fraction possible for that percent. So what I notice here is that both of these are divisible by 10 to start. And when I divide those both by 10, I end up with 4 over 10. I then notice both of these are divisible by 2. And as a result, I simplify this percent of 40% down to the simplified fraction of 2/5. So now let's apply this same knowledge to 24%. 24%, yes, I could color in 24%, so it would be 24 of these boxes. But ultimately, I now know that if I want to write a percent as a fraction, I just take that percent and I put it over 100. So here I have 24 over 100. Now I can instantly see that this needs to be simplified. I know that they're both divisible by 4. So that gives me 6 over 25. And that looks like it is as simple as it goes. So 24% written as a fraction would be 6/25. Then from here, my next one, I want to write this as a fraction as well. So I take 67 and I put it over 100. And what I notice here is that this fraction cannot be simplified further. So I stop, and it is now in simplest form. So as I said, writing a percent as a fraction simply means that you put that percent over 100 and simplify. So let's practice this with a few more numbers just to make sure we've got it. So first, with 7%, remember we want to put 7 over 100, that's turning it into a fraction, and then I notice that this is fully simplified, so I can stop. I then look at B and I see 80%, so I put 80 over 100. I then notice that this can be simplified further, so this fraction is not done, so I notice both of them are divisible by 10. So that would simplify that down to be 8 over 10. And then I can see that both of these are also divisible by 2. So in simplest form, 80% written as a fraction would be 4/5. I then can move on to 124%. That one I would write 124 over 100. And then from here, my goal is to simplify. So I can see that these are both divisible by 4. So my denominator would become 25, and my numerator would become 31. And then from here, I can see this is in simplest form, so my fraction is fully simplified. Then from here, the last one, 235%, I would write as 235 over 100. From here, I can see that these are both divisible by at least 5. So I divide 235 by 5, and I end up with 47. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So there we have it, 4% written as fractions in their simplest form. So now that we've got that down, let's move on to writing percents as decimals. And what I like to do with these is I actually like to use the fraction form to help me write these percents as decimals. So what I start with is I start by writing that percent as a fraction. So we know that 43% written as a fraction is 43 over 100. Now, because our goal isn't to write this as a fraction, and we don't need to try to simplify these further, we can just leave them all in their fraction form. So 9% would become 9 over 100, and 124% would become 124 over 100. Now from here what we can do is we can use our calculator to help us out. So instead of trying to figure these out in our head, if we take our calculator and we do 43 divided by 100, you'll notice that you get the decimal of 0.43. So now you have your decimal form of that percent. Then if you take 9 divided by 100, you'll notice that you end up with 0.09. So 9% written as a decimal. Then if you take 124 over 100, you get 1.24. 124% written as a decimal. So if you use the fraction forms, converting a percent to a decimal can be very simple. So now let's focus on writing fractions as percents. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually convert our fractions into their decimal forms so that can help us turn our fractions into a percent. So the first thing I'm going to do with each of these is turn them into a decimal. So I'll take 5 divided by 8, which is 0.625. 1 divided by 50, which is 0.02. And 70 divided by 50, which is 1.4. So here we have our decimal forms of all of these numbers. The easiest way to turn them back into percents is to take this decimal form and just multiply it by 100 because percents are based off of 100%. So if you take your decimal form and you multiply it by 100, you will get the percent form of that particular number. So if we multiply 0.625 by 100, we end up with 62.5%. If we take 0.02 and multiply it by 100, we end up with 2%. And if we take 1.4 and multiply it by 100, we end up with 140%. So now you should be able to convert between fractions, percents, and decimals pretty seamlessly.